So we're going to finish up the hormone series today. And I got a little bit of grief from my community about picking on women with all their crazy hormone issues. Let's see, we've got PMS, PCOS, menopause, puberty. We've got all these things. And men are just sort of like, we said like 2 words about them, which is really funny because the same thing happened in my daughter's actually 7th grade sex education class. I guess all the boys, they were horrified when they started hearing about girls, and they were like, why do we have to sit here and listen to all of this? We're like, this has nothing to do with us. And they were completely confused and horrified. And apparently my daughter's teacher looked at them and started laughing and said, it's all down here from here. It's all downhill from here. If you think this is bad, it's only going to get worse. You're never going to understand women. So yeah, women are a little bit more complicated, but let's talk, let's talk a little bit about men, and then I'm going to wrap up the whole hormone series. I'm going to just recap a little bit. So I want to start off with a picture since I can't write for you guys. I want to see if you can see this. Can you guys see this? I'm so sick and tired of all of the, I don't know about you guys, but all of the election stuff going on. But I thought this was kind of fun. So this, what does this have to do with anything, right? All right, sort of a fun little picture. That is something called low D2, D4 finger ratio. What does it have to do with anything? Well, you can actually, not just men, women, you too, can check your finger ratio. If your ring finger is longer than your index finger, so if your 4th finger is longer than your 1st finger, it can be an indication that you got too much, well, not too much, you got more testosterone in utero. And when that happens, there are some studies now actually indicating that it's associated with several things, that can happen. Let's see, it's associated with higher incidence of ADD in males, assertiveness in females, aggression in males, academic performance, so increased academic performance, which is why I showed that picture, right? Leadership, innovation, and promiscuity. Yikes. So I thought that was sort of an interesting photo to show. Not that that necessarily means that somebody who has a longer ring finger is always going to be promiscuous, but it is an indication that they got more testosterone. And if they don't have, say, everything else optimized, they don't have a good brain, and they don't have good values, and they don't have purpose, then it might be an indication of trouble to come. So just pay attention, just sort of a fun way to start off our little talk today. So testosterone, why do we love this thing called the big T, testosterone, right? Women are attracted to it their entire lives. Men chase it as well. Why? Because testosterone is great. Frankly, tell you a little bit of a personal story about me. I had PCOS pretty significantly and never knew it. I never knew I had PCOS. I was not diagnosed. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's actually a disorder with women where your estrogen and progesterone can be low, but your testosterone is high. And often, usually the way it is diagnosed is because women can get overweight, have difficulty losing weight, they get acne, their hair thins, they get facial hair. Well, I didn't have any of that. In fact, I was never more lean because I used to work out really hard. And so I was never more lean than during that time, really muscular. And the only thing I did get was I started to break out. And I'm like, what is going on? I thought I was going into early menopause. Turns out my testosterone was really high. Well, my husband used to always say to me when we were first dating and we first met, he used to go, the only time you scare me is when you act like a girl. There's something to that. When women get high testosterone, it can be really fun because you have this high drive, high motivation. I never wanted to be still. But there's also a lot of problems that come along with that, like increased risk for diabetes and heart disease and lots of issues. So testosterone is a fun thing, and it's also troublesome when it's out of balance. So let's talk about it for a minute. Why do people like testosterone so much? Well, I'm going to show you one reason I like it. Can you see that guy? All right. Well, that's one reason I like testosterone. Just kidding, sort of. Testosterone, what does it do? It gives you big muscles. It increases your libido, your energy, your motivation, your drive. It also increases your focus. So it gives you better cognitive function. And so when it gets out of balance, if it's too high or too low, it can be a problem. And this is in men and women. So a lot of people think that it's like the male hormone. They think of estrogen as the female hormone and testosterone as the male hormone. But really, if testosterone is low in women, it actually is a problem as well, because it really decreases your libido as well, women, and it also impairs your cognitive functioning. So if you have low testosterone, here's what can happen. Increased risk of, this is mostly in men, low testosterone in men increases your risk of heart disease, decreased risk of bone density, so it lowers your bone density, which is not good, decreases your sex drive, depression, motivation, lowers motivation, and we just said it impairs your cognition. Now, if it's too high, let's talk about testosterone that's too high. In men, they get hurt more, okay, because they have more drive, so they get hurt more. Now, especially a lot of men that we see who have ADD on top of that, yikes. So you've got high testosterone and ADD, oh my gosh. So these are the risk takers, big time risk takers. But they do get hurt more. Even if they just have high testosterone and they don't have ADD, they have a tendency to get hurt more because they've got total intensity and drive. They tend to drink more. They tend to be more promiscuous. They have higher incidence of STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. Riskier behavior, just like people with ADD, more criminal activity. They actually get arrested more. And they tend to get fired from jobs more often. So it sounds a little bit like ADD, right? Some of those side effects and some of those symptoms. And then, like I said, add that to ADD and now you've really got some issues. So they've actually done some studies on guys in prison, and there are actually a lot of guys who have high testosterone and ADD, and that's a recipe for disaster. But when women have high testosterone, they can end up with issues like what I had. You have really this high intensity, high drive, don't want to sit still, but you also have a hard time, like they can be misdiagnosed with psychiatric disorders. Some women who have it really bad, mine wasn't super high elevated, it was just high. Some women who have really like traditional PCOS, they're often misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder. So, or like other psychiatric illnesses, and it can be really, really awful. Oh, there you are, you're back. Okay, so they can have these super bad highs and lows, and that can be really awful. Now, if a woman's testosterone is too high, it puts her at risk for heart disease, just like if a man's is too low. So you want to pay attention to that. But just like men, she can have a higher tendency to be commitment phobe. Now women won't have, the studies didn't show that they have the same risk of STDs. I'm sure it is an increase, but women have more anxiety. So they'll have a tendency to be more cautious, more careful. So hopefully that makes sense. But they will have decreased empathy. Women will have decreased empathy if they have high testosterone. So that is the story on testosterone, and is one of the reasons we talk about getting it balanced. Now, one thing I wanted to just touch on, we talk about men and midlife crisis, and there's like this stereotype. There's this crazy stereotype. I don't know how crazy it is, but there's a stereotype about men hitting their late 40s, mid to late 40s, and all of a sudden going through midlife crisis, and they want to trade in their older model for the younger model, and they want to go get a red Ferrari and or Porsche or whatever their favorite flavor is, and turn their whole life upside down. But it's not 100% true. It's a stereotype, and we think of it just like we think of women going through menopause as being completely insane. I'm not going to add anything to that comment, but why? Where did the stereotype come from? Usually if there's a cliche, there's something to it. Where did it get started and why? Well, if you look at the studies, men are most likely to cheat during that time in their life. They're most likely to have affairs and cheat and go through this problem during that phase of their life. And if you look at some of the reasons why do men go through that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, their testosterone is decreasing, but it's a little bit more than that. When a man's testosterone decreases, it actually affects his cognitive functioning. See, in our clinics, we know it's a little more complicated than that. You can't just box people into something. You can't stereotype people. And we hear full stories and we see things. It does affect their brain function. Now, if they have an underlying brain issue in addition to that, oh boy, watch out. Okay, so you want to make sure you're getting everything treated and getting all of your numbers optimized. You don't know what else is going on with them. So make sure you're getting that optimized and treated. But also, if they're getting bored with their life at home, and now all of a sudden both men and women have decreasing sexual drive. So you've got a husband and wife who both have this diminishing drive, but for men that can feel like they begin to face their mortality. So where women have a different way of handling those issues, they're more nesting creatures. They're family oriented. Men are like, oh my gosh, does this mean that I'm getting to the end of my life? And that can feel devastating to a man. And so he's going to start reaching out for ways to fix that. Now, depending on how men think, every man's different. That's why I don't like the stereotype. Depending on a man's values, on his morals, on his purpose. And that's what a lot of studies show. It depends on what he's got going on in his life. Not every man is going to do the same thing. But that can be a recipe for disaster. If he's got diminishing brain function, along with diminishing testosterone, along with a lack of purpose and values in his life, and he's got a wife at home going through menopause who is not the nicest person and doesn't have any sex drive at all. It's like a wet blanket. She'd rather like do laundry 6 times. Then yeah, it can be an issue. So I'm not telling anybody this stuff so that you have an excuse. If anything, I am the queen of no excuses. So if anything, I'm telling you this so that you can understand what's happening, get it fixed. Okay, so go get it fixed. You don't want to throw everything away for some stupid whim and then all of a sudden look back later and go, what did I do? So, you don't want to do that. And it's really expensive. Seeing your kids on the weekends and divorce court and lawyers, I know, unfortunately, I was married before. It really sucks. So don't do that. Figure out what's going on and get it fixed if you can. Prevent that from happening. So women, on the other hand, let's talk about women who cheat for a second, because these guys are cheating with someone. All right, we always talk about men who cheat. Who are they cheating with? Okay, that's my question. They're cheating with somebody. So it turns out that women who cheat, the number, like the biggest age bracket for women who cheat is actually women from 25 to 35. So it's before they hit menopause. It's actually they're younger. Their hormones are still raging a little bit. And so that's one issue. And they also don't have that same sense of purpose. They haven't maybe experienced the family, the nesting thing yet, or what it feels like to have that taken away. And so maybe they don't have the empathy for a woman going through that. They might not be there yet. Whatever it is, they don't have that same level of responsibility. So now women, unfortunately, the next decade from 35 to 45 isn't too far behind. But mostly it's that 25 to 35 is the number one age bracket for cheating. And men are always going to be visual creatures. They're going to be attracted to women who are beautiful and young and who don't give them crap, pardon my French. But when a woman's going through menopause, her brain's rewiring. She's done. She's tired of all of the years of having to put up with everything to save her nest. And now she's becoming more self-oriented again. So she's becoming testosterone dominant because her estrogen's dropping. And she's tired of everyone. And she's like, go do it yourself. I'm finished. And it's actually women who file for divorce more often than men. So she's just over it. And so that can actually, women, your behavior, if a man's thinking about it, can tip it over the edge. I'm just saying, you want to think together as a family. Save yourselves as a family. Do it as a team. Don't blame each other if you can help it. So look at that and look at the way that all of these hormones actually can affect your brain and the way your brain affects your hormones. Because we see this stuff in our clinics and it's really sad. So let's wrap everything up. So we talked about high testosterone, low testosterone, what it can do. Estrogen, too much estrogen in a man gives you man boobs. You don't want that. That's really unattractive to your wives. So what can you do? Men, number one way to boost your testosterone, cut out the sugar and go exercise, lift some weights. So eat more protein and fat and go lift some weights. Cut out the sugar. If you need to get optimized, I always recommend you go see a hormone specialist. I mean, I really do. Whether you want to do hormone replacement therapy or you want to try and do some stuff naturally first, whatever, go see someone and see what options you have. It's all about your options. Women, what increases testosterone in women to where it's at an unhealthy level? Too much sugar and not enough exercise. Isn't that interesting? So we always say there's a lot of ways to get sick, but really one way to get well. That's what we mean. So, I mean, I just think our bodies are so amazing. You can do the same things, the same thing. Too much sugar, the standard American diet. Too much sugar, refined carbs, chemicals in your diet actually increase a woman's male hormones and decrease, put her out of balance. Whereas for a man, they decrease his male hormones and put him out of balance. I find that fascinating. But the cure is the same. So, really interesting. So, same thing. Let's just recap some of the other hormones. So, I told you about polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, you want to get that treated because it can actually ruin relationships as well. And you can be misdiagnosed, which is a disaster for health insurance. It's a disaster for relationships. It's a disaster for, just your life, to be misdiagnosed with a psychiatric disorder when what you really needed was to have your hormones balanced. So get your hormones checked. Know that whether it's PCOS or not. If you're not having regular cycles, if you have facial hair, acne that's unexplained, unexplained weight gain that you can't control, go get it checked. Highly recommend that. So, because it also will cause insomnia and stuff like that. And men, you don't want high estrogen. We just talked about why. So, what does estrogen do? So, we've talked about PMS. We've talked about menopause and how they can, really hurt relationships if you don't have a way to sort of manage your way through them. We see the brains of people, but you don't have to. We live in a time and age when you can get access. You have access to all of this information, things that you can do naturally, doctors that balance hormones, all these ways to do things. Exercise for every single thing I've talked about helps every one of these issues. Cutting out sugar helps every one of these issues. Did you know there were studies done? Eating from the rainbow. Studies done on adolescents who eat more plant-based foods. So fruits and vegetables actually start puberty later, and it actually helps women to go into menopause later, and they have better balance with their hormones. So everything we teach you with the Brain Warriors Way and the Omni Diet that is already out there, my book, The Omni Diet, it's all going to help you through all of this. Because if you have high estrogen, we're on estrogen. High estrogen, it increases your symptoms of PMS, gives you really heavy periods, and you are at higher risk for cancer as well. But if your estrogen's too low, it actually increases your brain problems. You can't think clearly. So you don't want it either direction, too high or too low. So that's really what I want to leave you with. But what I want you to think about as we go away is protect your brain and your relationships and your hormones. So get your hormones checked, know how they affect your brain, know what's going on. Do you know that PMS, actually your brain changes during PMS? Your brain changes when your testosterone is low. Your brain changes when your progesterone is not right. So progesterone is your body's natural Valium. So that's why having these things out of balance can really affect your relationships. So make sure that you're getting this stuff fixed, optimized. And make sure you're talking to your partner openly. It might sound like a really good idea to just do something, it's like I'm frustrated, I feel old, I'm going to go have an affair. And oh, by the way, men, the top 3 reasons women have affairs is to be understood, be heard, and revenge. So yeah, they want passion too, but those are the top 3 reasons. So revenge tops the list. It's like one of the top reasons. So, that's just all really painful, and it's really expensive. And it's not necessary if you can just take some time to work through all of this. We see it fixed frequently when people take the time to work through it and get this stuff checked.